we know we promised you day one games. We are removing Call of Duty in order to keep the price of Game Pass the same. I'm sure there's a lot of Xbox gamers to be like, cool, great, because I would rather have that.
And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and this episode is brought to you by Micro Center and their fall savings event. Get a free 128 gigabyte flash drive or the latest deals through the links below for Micro Center. And then it is also brought to you by Ace Magic and their F5A AI 370 mini PC that you can get $130 off through the links below as well. And today I'm having somebody on that, honestly, I've wanted to have on for quite a long time. And it was funny. I believe I reached out to this person a couple weeks ago, and it's always this thing of like, okay, the hamster wheel continues. Who's the next guest? Who should I ask on? Maybe someone having to do with like the Intel Nvidia buyout thing going on, but then I noticed there's just tons and tons of console news. And since I invited this guest who accepted, me and my friends were laughing after I invited you like a week after you said yes, because it's like the amount of console news that has come out specifically even for Xbox is comical to the point where I'm like, well, it's couldn't be more fortuitous I had this person. But please introduce yourself, tell people what you do. And I'm actually also curious what got you into doing podcasts and stuff on YouTube, and what how did you meet Colin? How'd you come on get it into Last Stand Media? I really don't know your origin story.
Cool. Well, first of all, Tom, thanks for having me. I got to say, by the way, mustache looking great. I had my mustache, and sometimes my beard outgrows it, so I made sure to trim down because I saw it in your last video. I'm like, dude, we gotta rock the mustache. But yeah, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be on here. Of course, you've been on our content many times over at Last Stand, so it's cool to be over here. For those who don't know about Last Stand, we're a gaming podcast network. Our big show is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast with me, Colin Moriarty, and Chris Raygun, and myself. And I'm the executive producer over there. So I manage all the different shows we do. We have Defining Duke with Xbox, Punching Up for Nintendo, and we have like a gameplay show called Summon Sign. We've got all kinds of stuff that we're doing. So I'm the one that's handling all of the editing and the production work and the thumbnails and all kinds of stuff. It's a lot. But I'm trying to think, how did I get into this? So I met Colin I guess at this point it was a long time ago. I was a fan of his for years when he was at IGN and then Kind of Funny.
He's very old. He's becoming an old man. He's been around forever.
He's been around quite a long time. I remember that was one of the first podcasts I really got into was Podcast Beyond.
Same.
And that was like dude, people make money talking about video games. I should try to do that. So I had like my own channel back then and my own podcast and stuff. But things with Colin started because he had a show called Fireside Chats where he would interview interesting people. Now, in this case, I was not the interesting person. My really good friend and someone who used to work for us, Ben Smith, ironically was the mayor of my hometown at this time. And we also worked together at our old website called Handsome Phantom.
That'd be such a fun flex, by the way, at parties. Oh, I'm the mayor.
Yeah. It was just like, we're going to have the mayor's going to come hang out tonight. We're going to drink beers and play a board game or something, So he pitched Colin to be on Fireside Chats. And Colin's like, cool. Yeah, this sounds great. Local small town mayor. We were in Los Angeles for E3 together for my old game site. And so that's when I met Colin, is that Ben and I were just there together. So Colin said, I was like, oh yeah, he can tag along, no problem. And that's where I first met Colin. And then the rest is all just pure luck in that Colin on a show mentioned he was looking for an editor. I emailed him at the right time. And he gave me opportunity to edit some of his shows, audio only. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, where it was like, now I'm editing all of his shows. Now I'm handling some of the other production work. Now, eventually he asked me to like fill in on sacred symbols.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started asking me to come on the show every week. So there was like this multiple month period where I'm like, am I on this show? Am I not? So yeah, it was just, kind of a whirlwind of the company just becoming more successful, getting more opportunities and responsibilities. And here we are now. So that's where I'm at and how I got here, I guess, overall. But I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about so many things too, whether it's connections I've made with guests that are part of large YouTube channels or just industry experts. Just I emailed them, they responded, and that turned into something. Anyone listening, don't be annoying, but don't be afraid to do that. Like, really.
Right. And the key part of the success of the email for me with Colin is that I had listened to him for so long that I don't want to say I didn't manipulate him or anything, but I knew that if I wrote a 5-paragraph essay on why I was the one for him to pick, he was going to see that, glaze over, and then say thanks, but no thanks, or just delete it.
The emails he responds to me about, the quicker ones get a higher chance that he responds.
Right. So I was just like, hey, this is when we met. This is what I heard you need help. This is what I do. Let me know. Boom. And that was it. So yeah, reaching out, and even before, like with my old video game website and stuff, it was like, you gotta just be polite and ask people. And we always said, you don't want to be a fake, but you have to fake it till you make it. Like, just act like you're the professional that you want to be, and people will often treat you like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it works out. So obviously you don't want to lie or do anything, but just act as big as you want to be, or treat it as professional as you want to be, and it actually works out.
Yeah, like don't fake it till you make it.
Right.
Just make it. Be the thing you want to become, and maybe you will become that.
Right.
I will, you talking about listening to Podcast Beyond, it makes me laugh because that was one of the first ones I listened to as well. It was like I discovered that, and this is how old that was, like Mark Maron and like maybe Comedy Bang Bang or something. Like that's how far back some of those go. And I just remember listening to Podcast Beyond and then being like, oh, so there's what else is there? Because I had these 9-hour drives during college to go from Central Illinois to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to Michigan Tech, where I went to college. And it was just like 5 comedy albums I had and some music. I think by then I don't remember if it was on an iPod or if I actually just had it on my phone. Like we had smartphones around when I went to college, just barely.
Yeah.
But I think back, like when I was looking for stuff, and I listened to some things just because they were also on IGN because I didn't know about other stuff. And just having like 2 podcasts to listen to on a 9-hour drive, even for half of it, the younger generations do not know what they have in podcasts when it comes to driving, in my opinion. I don't know if you can. I think you live in, or you did, or you're from Western Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, like north of Pittsburgh. Actually, okay, it's easy to point out. I live in the town where Trump got shot, Butler. Oh. So we're famous now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's so you certainly understand long drives then, because I've family out there, and you have to drive to go like 5 miles. You have to drive like 45 minutes around a mountain everywhere. So I assume you agree. Like you like the era before you had tons of podcasts, and after is a whole new world when it came to actually traveling somewhere.
Yeah, and that's I have a lot of people ask me, and I'm sure this happens to you. People are like, "How do I do what you do?" And I'm like, starting a podcast right now is nearly and to be successful as an unknown is like almost next to impossible, because there are so many podcasts out there that are really good that occupy a listener's like diet.
Do you ever have like 30 subscriptions? Like you go to a new phone, you resubscribe to everything on an app, and you realized after you move to the new phone, there's like 10 podcasts you used to listen to that you don't. But it's not because they're bad. It's just you don't. There's so many. You're listening to these other ones. Right.
Yeah. It's a totally saturated market at this point. And I'm super thankful and very blessed to be able to still do podcasts. And now like almost like podcasts, it's almost like YouTube podcasts kind of have changed everything. I mean, we're here doing a video podcast. Sacred switched over to doing a video podcast. So it's like we're kind of in this weird hybrid YouTube podcast space.
Same. I was audio only for a while, and then it just felt like you had to.
Yeah, you got to move over, and it's always changing and different, um yeah, back then, I think Colin and Podcast Beyond, and of course Greg Miller, they like cracked the secret back then. It's obvious now that it's like personality driven content, how important that is for gaming. It's like anyone, if you want just news, you're going to go to IGN or any website, or even just Twitter at this point. You don't need to go to one of those websites, but a lot of people care about the person delivering the news and what they think, and having for positive and for negative a connection to that person. So for them to kind of already pick up on that and be like, no, this show is like fun, and not just like, now we're going to talk about PS3, So it's crazy. I mean, things have changed so drastically since then already.
Well, and it's tricky because it's like you saying that makes me think about, like, you have to give your opinions. They have to be at least to a degree unfiltered and genuine. And at the same time, that's the sort of unbuttoned up thing that will cause people to constantly attack you on Twitter just because they don't agree with you. And I really think there's a significant amount of people that can't understand that you not agreeing doesn't make the person wrong. You just don't agree. That's fine. You don't need to agree, but that doesn't mean they're wrong, and you don't need to hate them. But you're always going to have to invite that type of criticism, because if it's all perfectly meticulous, it actually is boring or really uninteresting. That's what it is. It's uninteresting that you didn't hear this person sit there and just say their opinion, get into it, say the one thing where they're not supposed to say, where they're like, well, look, I really think that's how it works. So are we going to pretend that's not true? And that's how you get the criticism, but that's also the only way. And I don't think it's like, oh, you're trying to stand out by being controversial. It's like, no, like, your opinion isn't interesting unless it's the whole opinion, because that's what makes an opinion interesting.
Right. And yeah, it's tough with, podcasts are great. They're long form, and you do get that unfiltered feel to it. And I mean, for us with Sacred, if you record 4 hours a week,
I know
you can't always be on point with every fact all the time. So, and I think our audience is great, because they do give us a lot of grace with that. I think a lot of people understand that. But I mean, the key thing for us is just like, I don't want to say we're unfiltered, but it's like, we're just saying what we...
It sounds so cringe if you're like, oh, I just say it like it is.
Yeah. We try to be fair. We don't try, let companies or whatever influence our opinions, or like, we're just saying what we think and trying to be honest about it. And shockingly, that's becoming more and more rare. So it's been a big boost for us.
Before I get to the first main subject, I think this will eventually lead into it, so I'll just use this as the bridge. Like,
sure,
I do feel like there are these things, and it's one of the things that, like you said, the made sacred symbols stand out. It's one of the types of things that I think makes Broken Silicon actually stand out quite a bit in my niche, which is definitely a niche, but a niche where I just saw that there just wasn't a podcast where people were like, this is what we think AMD's next CPU is going to look like. And I'm not going to like either have some press release that I read and then say nothing else, or like, a part of that is, I feel like there are these things, and you don't follow this, Colin doesn't follow this, I don't follow this, that you're not supposed to say. And it's like, in the gaming world, it's like, never say that a new company should replace an old one. Like, we have to say that whoever the current players are, we hope they all succeed. Oh, they all better succeed because more competition's great. You can't say, actually, I think this company is kind of destroying this industry and they should be replaced by somebody else. There's stuff like that, or, everything must be as cheap as possible. We can't even have a conversation about if paying more for more is worth it, or you're anti-consumer. I mean, things that come to mind for me that I'm becoming less and less afraid. I guess I'm not afraid because I was very outspoken about it, but less and less hesitant to just say it like it is. It's like stuff like Intel's graphics division, which is completely melted down, where I'm like, everyone's like, well, of course, if they succeed, that'll bring more competition. Will it? Because they've been doing this for 5 years, and they seem to like, and you might find this funny, and it's probably something you didn't see because it's a bit, dork in the weeds of PC gaming. But when Intel launched their first graphics cards in like 2020, was it 2 or something, all the reviews said AMD and Nvidia have had the best drivers for a long time. And I'm like, people used to just say Nvidia. Now you're grouping them together. So actually what Intel just did is justify AMD charging more money. Like they did more competition, and it's the same thing with like Game Pass. I like to bring it into like some of the stuff you talk about more on Sacred Symbols. Like you can't say Game Pass might be anti-consumer. We just have to hope it succeeds, and that everything every company does succeeds, whether it's PlayStation Core, if you want a deep cut from the PS3 era, or like every little thing. I wonder what you think about that, because I do think that is what waters down so many of these major websites is we have to say everyone must succeed. We have to say we're rooting for every game and everything that comes out because more is always better. That's just not always true.
Right. I think the thing for us on Sacred, something we get either comments or accused of, maybe too strong of a word, is that we're too corporate friendly in certain ways. And I think it comes up to what you said about...
I'm accused of that too. Go on.
Yeah, it's like I often bring up like game pricing and people and like the price of games. It's too expensive. This company's trying to rip you off. Nintendo's trying to rip you off. And I'm like, I'm not saying Nintendo isn't greedy. Certainly they're greedy, but they're also doing what they think is going to be the most successful for them. And we keep buying it. So it's like, I don't know what you guys like. Yeah. Mario Kart World, $80. I don't like that, but I'm not surprised by it, and even just providing a justification for a price can be viewed by some as like being a corporate apologist. And it's like, no, I'm just looking at the market and what people are choosing to buy and what they're not going to buy, and can understand why Nintendo would do that, or Sony, whatever. I mean, all these companies at this point are just continually raising prices. Of course, there's the wider economic element about that too. No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear about inflation. Just like, I need to be able to afford the games I want, and nothing else matters. And it's like, I get that, but also you don't live in reality.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with like graphics card or CPU pricing, where like I have this information, and the one thing I can never know is price. I mean, I've been told by people in the industry, literally sometimes like the CEO of Nvidia won't know the price until 10 minutes before he goes on stage. And then it's like,
wow, last
minute, they're like, this. It's usually probably decided about a day or two before, but honestly, not more than that. So anything about pricing, especially at the start of a gen, is usually like, well, this is what they're thinking now. We'll see. And this is why I think it can cost this much. And then, yes, the comments flood in. How dare you say it can justify costing this much? And I'm like, I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying that is the math they're doing, though, right now, to decide if that's what they should charge. Which, all right. Speaking of charging more for prices and people complaining about it, let's get into the PlayStation 5 Pro. Yeah. So you put out a video about this. I have a PS5 Pro. I'm long recommended, or not long really, but like since it's come out, I've thought if you don't have a PlayStation yet, probably just get the Pro, because how much are you going to spend on games a year? I mean, the extra $200 will make most of your games, if not all of them, run better. But there is some weird stuff going on. Please.
Yeah. So my video, I've been putting out videos on my personal channel. I think it's called I'm Over PS5 Pro. And the point of the video overall, this is right around when Silent Hill F released just a few weeks ago. And particularly, I mean, Digital Foundry, which is, they put out all kinds of comparisons and stuff like that. We're saying about how the PS5 Pro implementation had clear issues with it, particularly with the PSSR implementation. And before I made the video, I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, why does this keep happening? Where there have been numerous examples in the past year where there are games that they're maybe not significantly worse than the base PS5 version, but they are compromised in one way or another. I think Jedi Fallen Survivor, or not Fallen Survivor, whatever, the second Jedi Fallen Order game, that one had obvious PSSR issues. I think the Avatar game had issues. Silent Hill 2 had issues.
And yeah, I remember that one.
And so my point in the video is just like, sure, are these minor issues that a lot of people wouldn't notice? Yes. But the target market of PS5 Pro users are the enthusiasts that have $2,000 OLED TVs that do notice these kinds of things. And there have been multiple cases in the past year where the owners that paid the premium for a PS5 Pro have to pause and be like, what the heck? Like, I paid more for this console, and then particularly in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, or Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater.
I've heard that game has a lot of performance issues, though, to be fair.
True. But it's like, okay, maybe I'm willing to deal with performance issues, but the console I paid more for has a worse frame rate than the base one. And it's like, yeah, well, it's higher res. And it's like, no, that's really. So my point in the video is that, like, Sony, while it's not the job to optimize their third-party developers, there's clearly been numerous issues with third-party developers and the PS5 Pro. And there needs to be some level of quality control where if these are your high-tier users that are spending extra for the console, make sure that they're at the very least getting an on-par experience with the PS5 Pro. Preferably better, being that's what you're paying the extra for. But so yeah, that was the point of the video. And I think what was interesting to me was the response was not, I don't want to say overwhelming, but a lot of people that were PS5 Pro owners are like, yeah, I'm pissed about this, that this keeps happening. And it's become more clear to me. I'm curious what you think about this, Tom, is that the PS5 Pro is starting to feel like the beta test for all of their AI stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
And we are, dealing with all of the beta testing issues on PS5 Pro games. And to be clear, I said this in the video, but I want to say for your audience too, there are amazing PS5 Pro games. I'm playing Ghost of Yotei right now on the Ray Tracing Pro mode. It is excellent. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There are many, many examples of excellent Pro games. But the fact is just that there has been too many times in the past year that I've been like, why is this happening?
So I guess if I may have like a mental break, I basically have two responses to you. I don't know if you've ever used ChatGPT, but it's like, we're trying two things. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll merge in the middle here. But the first thing, and it's something I wrote down ahead of time in my notes, is I think there's definitely an argument to be made, and it has to be true to a degree. I mean, it has to be logically, that Sony would be taking Pro support much, much, much more seriously if Microsoft was still competing, which I want to be clear. And this is the thing I've heard people say, well, we have to root for Microsoft because we need more competition. Guys, the PS5 Pro costing $700 is them not competing. Like, we need a new competitor, I would argue, even though there will be another Xbox. But like, I think Sony doesn't even pay attention to what Microsoft's doing anymore. Like, they don't care. And I think if they did care, there would be better support. And I know this because there was competition at the start of the gen. The Series X at first was selling at least half as well, if not mostly as well, for the first few months as the PS5. And I remember when it came out, I don't remember if it was first to get this, but I think it was. Like, Xbox Series X got variable frame rate support first, 1440p support, I think, out of the gate. And Sony took forever to add that stuff. It was weird. Right. But they did eventually. They added VRR, they added 1440p, and they updated PS Plus to have other options. All of those things only happened because they thought they needed to respond to Microsoft. And right now, the base PS5 is outperforming the Series X, and devs are talking about not even releasing new games on it. So Sony's like, we don't need to do anything. And were they to be competing better, I think there would be more thought put into it. That's number one. Number two, I did just look up, though, to see if I could find this quickly. Now, look, this isn't like an A to B video analysis that's 30 minutes long. They spent a week preparing for. This is like 10 minutes. I'm sorry, 2 minutes of me looking around, but I can find similar complaints for the PS4 Pro. Where, like, here, I have something from, and they're like, why doesn't Until Dawn have PS4 Pro support? And like, I have a WCCF Tech article saying PS4 Pro support is growing up to be a disappointment. So this really isn't a defense of it because it should be well supported. This is a suggestion, though, that maybe it isn't as different from last gen as we thought it was.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about that, or if you remember anything about PS4 Pro.
Yeah, I wasn't a day one PS5 Pro owner, but I did get it either that year or shortly after. And I think that partially what, at least in my mind, made PS4 Pro more defendable was if you wanted to power a nice 4K TV, you needed the Pro, really. And that was right around the time that I got my first HDR 4K nice. It was the first nice TV I ever had in my life. And then I got the PS4 Pro and it was like, wow, the games that do support this are excellent. I remember playing Horizon Zero Dawn for the first time on PS4 Pro with my new TV. And I was like, man, this thing actually kind of rules. But PS5 Pro is being born into a different time where it's not really a transition time between TVs. I mean, I guess a lot of people already going into PS5 either had 4K or OLED or they just simply don't care and they're not the market for
the
PS5
best
Pro.
argument you can make is that there's no 120 hertz TVs, but frankly, those are pretty standard at the start of this generation. It's like just this year those are coming out or something.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's definitely part of it, is just that the games that are better are noticeable, but it's not like going from a 1080p TV to a 4K TV with proper 4K or up-res 4K, I guess, in the case of PS4 Pro.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference I would make between them, and I wonder if you agree with this, because I didn't get a PS4 Pro for years. I mean, eventually, I think my parents got me and my brother one because they're like, we haven't gotten you a gift for like years. Like, what would actually, like, I'm not buying a PS4 Pro on my own, but if you got me that'd be fun, Mom. You know, and so fun. Adult Tom still getting like a game console from his parents was a fun
nice.
And in hindsight, I don't know why I didn't get it right away. I mean, I got the one that was the quieter version and didn't require as much energy, so that's actually probably nice. But it's funny that I have a PS5 Pro, and I didn't hesitate to get it, but I did to get the PS4 Pro. Granted, I had less money back then, so that's a fair point. But it was kind of a steal, though. I mean, it's $400 for something that doubled your performance. And I think the biggest criticism of PS5 Pro is, hey, we didn't pay $400 for this. Even with inflation, this is a bit more expensive. So you really should, what am I paying for? That's the biggest complaint I would make, is that $400 for something that can, I mean, it's not full 4K, but can kind of power your 4K TV back when it was new, seems a lot more like a huge bargain than right now, where it's like it's cheaper than the same gaming PC, but it's not cheap. It's like $800 or more after a disk drive. Shouldn't we expect everything to work if we're paying more for it?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, is just that, and I touched on this earlier, just that some of the responses in my video were like, well, most people aren't going to notice that the grass is like pulsing with the, and
I disagree with that one. I'll accept some of the arguments, like if one thing was blurry, but pulsing, no.
Right. And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe some people would not care about this, but the PS5 Pro, the people that are putting down $700, they're the ones that are looking at the screen and seeing these types of things and wondering like, particularly, I mean, with Silent Hill F, that's the one where I was like, I have my old PS5 up here. Sure, the resolution isn't going to be quite as high, but it's not going to have this distracting foliage issue. Should I plug in my PS5, my standard PS5, and play the game on that instead? And it's like, dude, when you've gotten to the point where people are asking that question, that's an issue. And I think when you're bringing up like Xbox, them not needing to compete with them anymore and not caring, dude, I mean, I can totally see that, where it's like, they just, why bother? And dude, it's Sony's curation, and not to open a whole new can of worms, but it's like, when it comes to stuff like this, they just don't care. They'll release any slop on the PlayStation Store. They don't care. They don't care if a developer hands in a game that the PS5 Pro support sucks. It's just, why? Why do they need to care?
Yeah, I mean, this piece of content is brought to you by Micro Center. October is the fall savings event at Micro Center, so make sure you support the channel by clicking the links in the description to check out the widespread sales that Micro Center is conducting right now. But that's not all. Also in the description, you will find a link to sign up to get a free 128 gigabyte flash drive when the Phoenix, Arizona Micro Center opens. And there's also a link to Micro Center's news center, so you can see lead stories for all the newest upcoming tech. And besides saying that, I don't know what else there really is to say. Micro Center's been a fantastic sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for years now, and that's because they've been easy to work with, good to the channel, and, well, someone we're proud to work with because they really do give you fantastic deals like the latest, fastest gaming processors below MSRP with free RAM, and then also, of course, discounts on bundled motherboards as well. Now is an excellent time to build a PC. I really do think that right now in 2025, when you look at where CPU and RAM prices are going, and Micro Center is probably the best place to do it. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the links below to Micro Center today. I wonder what you think about this. This is something, I don't know if it was an argument, maybe a little bit of a disagreement with NX Gamer. I believe he's actually like the chief tech editor at IGN, does a lot of Digital Foundry like testing. And this was years ago where we were talking about what resolution and frame rate will GTA 6 probably do on the PS5 after that trailer came out that looked insane. And I was like, they got to have at least a 40 hertz VRR mode, because I'm sorry, 30 needs to die. Die. It needs to die. He's like, well, it's up to the devs and this. And I was like, no, I think Sony should mandate a game that has an optional 40 FPS mode. I'm not even saying 60. I feel like I'm throwing devs a bone here. Like, right. And that kind of goes with what you're saying, is there should be some degree of like, I guess they can't check every game that comes out every month, but there should be some degree where like there's a clause, like if you have this, we can then retroactively reprimand your game on the store, like put in the minimum effort. But I wonder what you think about if they really should do that. Because I've talked to developers who hate that idea. Of course they do, though, because it would make their job harder. And if you think Sony should have like mandate a frame rate minimum, because I think they should.
I think you would maybe get into some sticky situations. I guess I'm thinking like, I'm
not asking for 120. I'm asking for 40. You know?
Yeah, for 40. I mean, 40 minimum, like on PS5 Pro. You're right that it doesn't feel like it seems like that much to ask for, to be able to do something like that.
And it's kind of like, to make a comparison, you'll hear people like argue about politics, and they're like, well, the government can't tell me what I can do with my whatever. And it's like, they do all the time. They say you can't kill people, right? Like the government can tell you what to do, and you're letting them do that. Right now, Sony doesn't let you launch games that run at 10 frames a second, I'm pretty sure. So there is clearly a limit somewhere. Clearly, they do have a mandate.
Right. Yeah. I think there should be some level of technical performance that is required. And you're right. Like when Cyberpunk on PlayStation 4 ran horribly, they were like, but I don't know if that comes out. I guess they didn't have a standard because they let it come out. Regardless, right. And then it bit them in the ass because they had to go and refund everybody that wanted it because it ran horribly. So I think when you're dealing with a console situation where Sony's name, whether it's a third party or not, I mean, it's Sony it's on their box, and with a console, you expect some level of it's just going to work. I don't think I have a problem with that. A mandated, I guess it depends too. It's like, okay, so let's say you mandated 30 FPS.
Sure.
Like, how consistent though? Because are you gonna like knock somebody if it dips during the craziest moment or something?
Well, it'd be like, what was it? That thing, like adult content. How do you know if it is? I know it when I see it. Like it could be a little wishy-washy, but it could be like, you have to have a 40 FPS option. We're not saying it can't dip to 25 every now and then. Right. But we are saying that if it is mostly running under 30, we will notice. And the 40 could just be there because it's kind of an above 30 number, where if you can hit that, it's going to be at least 30 on everything. And that's why we're doing it. I think you could still do that and just be like, I think at least, and be like, hey, come talk to us. If you're like, this game has to run at 29 frames per second, we can, give you a stamp, but make sure that you have to do that. Like, maybe there's like a 720p minimum for resolution thing. If it drops to 640 briefly with dynamic res, let us know if you think that's necessary for the game to work, but we don't think most people will. And I mean, I don't know, especially in this world where like Microsoft is, it seems like turning their next gen console into like a PC kind of, and Nintendo's kind of known for having games that run like crap. Like, wouldn't there be a benefit to being like, if you buy a PlayStation game, and I think Microsoft should even do this could be a benefit to the next gen Xbox. Like, if you buy a game on our system, it is going to run above 30. It is going to run above this resolution, and we're sure you're going to have this experience. This is why you get it here instead of on another PC or something. Like, couldn't that be like a Nintendo seal of approval for like the modern era or something?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I totally agree, and this is something that it's kind of related with Colin has said for years, that for the PlayStation Store, why don't they hire a small team of people, which for Sony's is really not going to be that much, that looks at each game that's submitted and says, okay, is this an actual video game? Like, or is this the jumping fish or whatever, those slop games that are just designed for platinum, and have some level of quality to it. What I mean, from a marketing perspective too, where it's always tough. This is something that's come up a lot on Sacred recently, where I try to, when people write in questions, I'm like, you have to remember in the context of the bubble that we're in, the hardcore gaming enthusiast bubble is not the majority. And you can see that based on like some of the player stats where like Sony makes most of their money off of live service games. We are not the target market. And so I could see from a perspective where they're like, well, you guys are the only ones that really care about this and complain about this. For a vast majority of our customers, if the game plays and doesn't crash, then they're happy. And it's funny, even in my own house, my wife, Holly, she has my old gaming laptop and she'll play games on it. She was playing 2 Point Museum and I watched it for a minute and dude, the frame rate was chugging. I was like, how can you play this? She's like, yeah, it's a little bad, but it's fine. And I'm like, man, it's eye-opening for me. It's good to see sometimes like outside of us that it's like, sadly, people just don't quite care about performance as much as we do.
So it's funny you say that too. Does she have like a proper gaming PC? Do you think has she like played around with that? And like, do you think if she got used to stable frame rates, she wouldn't want to go back? Because like one of my sponsors, Minis Forum, sent me a mini PC. It's like this big. It has like a mid-range, really by now definitely low-end AMD graphics card, like a 6600. This was years ago, and like a Zen 3 Plus 8-core CPU, so it's decent. Yeah, and like even that was enough to play it like this little monitor. I also could just give her that was like a 1600p 60 monitor. She could play Red Dead Redemption on that at 60 frames, Hogwarts Legacy at like almost ultra settings at 60 frames. And now, and then when she went back to her OG Switch, she was like, okay, actually, I see it. I can't do this anymore. She stopped playing one of the Zelda games until the Switch 2 came out because she's like, it is unplayable. So do you think, I think with a lot of people, don't like, and maybe your wife, do you think it could be that it's just they need to see it, and then they're like, "Oh, I can't." As Colin said this with 60 frames per second, I believe, I can't unsee this. I don't know why I was putting up with this in the past.
It's hard to say. I mean, she's primarily like right now we have one Switch 2 in our house, which she played Donkey Kong on, but she primarily plays on a Switch Lite, so she's not even hooked up to a TV.
My girlfriend had a Switch Lite. Yep,
and yeah, she even for a while she would play Civilization 5 on her computer or even my computer, and it ran like phenomenally. I mean, it's kind of an older game at this point, but we're on the go. She plays the Switch version of Civ 5 that is it, dude. And obviously that's not like a super gameplay heavy game. She's like, yeah, it's fine. It's amazing. I'm like, I wish I could be you. Because I look at the things she's playing sometimes and she's like, yeah, I mean, I can still play it. Like, God bless you.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely make do with a lot less. I have like a tablet with a decent APU that like I would play Battlefield 2042 at like 70 frames and 720p on the go instead of 4K 144, now on my desktop. But man, 24 frames, like 480p or something. That's,
dude. I get frustrated with myself because I have a Steam Deck OLED, and a lot of people, and you had him on the show recently, Jimmy Champagne, talks about like playing some of these AAA games on Steam Deck. He's like, oh yeah, just lock it to 30, put it these settings, and then if I remember when I ran Cyberpunk, which they optimized for deck, and like, dude, I don't want to do this. Like, I've seen how this game looks on my 4090 with my 4K OLED computer monitor. I don't want to play this game on the go. So my Steam Deck for me is like, I have no interest in playing powerful games on it. And it's like, sure, it can run, but
it's not the same experience though. It's just, especially if it's a competitive game, it's like, I remember I used to sometimes play Battlefield on my, this was many laptops ago, like Battlefield 1, and I would like play it on my laptop and it worked. And the Battlefield 5 was of course a little harder to run than Battlefield 1. And I could still do it kind of at 60, but eventually I stopped because I'm like, I'm just not getting the kill streaks I used to. And it's because I am at a disadvantage. And I don't need to do this. I can browse the web. You know, I've experienced what this game is like, you know, at this level, and it is becoming not the same game to me.
Yeah, absolutely. My snobbery of frame rates and resolutions annoys me constantly. I got a PlayStation Portal that one of our teammates, Gene Park, gave me because he got a new one. And I was like, this is so cool. But then like when I start playing it and I see the compression and the latency of, even on like amazing connections, it's like slightly latent. The frame pacing on the stream is bad. They've got like an old Wi-Fi chip in the Portal, dude. And I'm like, I want to love this thing. But anytime I sit down to play it, I just think about how much better of an experience I'd have at my TV. And to me, then it's like, I don't care about playing something portably. And I guess, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but with the new PlayStation handheld, that's partially the reason why I'm not, I mean, I'm interested in what it could be, but in terms of sitting down and playing games, I'm just not that interested in the lesser portable experience.
Yeah, no, let's move on to that. But I guess I know what else, we really have anything else to say about the PS5 Pro. I mean, I think I agree. There's a degree to which this is a beta for the next gen. Like you see Cerny,
yeah,
similar words still. Cerny going up there and saying it has 300 tops of AI performance and it can do all of this. And from what I'm hearing about RDNA 5 and the PlayStation 6 consoles, it's like, yeah, I think they're already playing around with which way they want to go and how they'll do AI on the chip. Like, do they want a neural processor? Do they just want to run it on the graphics card? I think there is an argument that the PS5 Pro in many ways is a beta to get PSR, FSR, AI performance, ray tracing optimizations going before the next generation. And I just still, you know, I still think like there needs to be a degree of, at this cutoff, the game, like Borderlands 4 doesn't have PS5 Pro enhanced.
Oh yeah.
And it runs significantly better than the base PS5. That's actually true, but it is ridiculous. Like there's like a minimum amount of effort. And I don't know what to say about it, except that Sony should respond to this. It's just, I don't know that they feel like they have to. And they kind of did similar stuff with the PS4 Pro, for being honest.
Yeah. And I mean, I would hope that you brought up GTA 6 earlier, and we talked about this on Sacred Symbols, that I bet that Sony has engineers at Rockstar if they can have, even if it's a 40 FPS mode, whatever, they want to make sure
oh my God,
the PS5 Pro, you are getting a better experience, because that's the game that will move units for not only just regular PlayStation 5, but people will upgrade to PS5 Pro.
That's what's going to kill the PS4. And you want them to go to PlayStation, not PC or Xbox.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get into the PS6. So, I mean, yeah, I put out a flurry of leaks about this. I know you've covered it on Sacred Symbols, but what are you feeling? How are you feeling about the PlayStation 6 strategy with an actual dedicated handheld? That's not a portal. It's a real handheld that runs the same games as the PS6, and just the direction they're going with performance next gen.
Yeah, it's really interesting, this idea of having two consoles and a potential dockable for the handheld. I think that I mentioned earlier that the data for PlayStation shows that a majority of people playing these are just playing live service games, or they only buy like a few games a year. And clearly Nintendo completely revitalized the handheld market with the Switch. And so it's funny because I've seen some responses. It's like, oh, PlayStation wants to get into handhelds because of Steam Deck. I'm like, no. Like Steam Deck, as cool as it is, it's not quite yet like a huge market driving force. I think it's important in that it's creating a new PC handheld market that will potentially blossom into something crazy for people. But for right now, I think they're looking at Nintendo as far as this PlayStation handheld. I'm curious to talk to you, Tom, just because we reported on your leaks and stuff like that, and I think we've joked that like the hardest part that we have the hardest thing to believe is the push to make this as affordable as possible. Just after seeing the PS5 Pro be $700, how is it possible that they can clock this in less than that or at that price?
I'm more concerned with the fact that the Series X is $800 and that the Xbox handheld is $1,000. Like that's what's going to make the PlayStation expensive. Yeah, I mean, I put out like that huge leak. I had a chart where I'm like, I think you noticed that too and brought it up on Sacred Symbols. Like, I kind of put it into different categories. There's like aggressive old school Sony mode where the PS3 was, and actually the 360 was sold at like a $200 loss or something. Like that's what they're willing to do if they want to win. And the PS4 and I believe PS5 was sold at like a 10% loss when it came out and then became profitable later. Like there's that mode. And then there's what I call PlayStation VR2 mode where I was like, guys, they're making like a 50% profit on this thing. This is absolutely outrageous what they're charging. And we don't know which way they will go. Like if they go in that direction, sure, it could be up to like $800. If they go to the old school and not PS3, we're going out of business, we have to sell off parts of Sony mode. I don't think they'd ever do that again. I think that's done. But if they went back to like the only 10% profit or loss mode, I mean, look, I think there's nothing stopping this from being $499 or $549 without a disk drive. And I know how crazy that sounds to people, but well, let me touch on that before I get into what I think they will do. So the reason that could be possible is the chassis it'll have lower cooling requirements, reduces cost for the power supply, the like capacitor and other components on the main board actually, and the cooling, like all of these liquid cooling issues and these things with the PS5. Like that is going to be less of an issue, I believe, with PS6. So you're already removing a ton of cost there. And then you go to like the motherboard doesn't need to cost more. Like the chassis will be probably cost less because I think it will be smaller, like PS4 Pro size, if I had to guess. Like all of these, most of the factors either aren't a cost increase. I don't think the controller will cost more. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they kept using the same controller. I'd probably clap if they did. Just maybe with slight tweaks for reliability. Like I think a lot of times people hear about like TSMC 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer, $30,000 wafers instead of $20,000 wafers, and they think, that means the console has to cost 50% more. And people forget that like that's like $100 of the $500. The case will be less, the cooling will be less, the power supply will be less. The only thing that will go up in cost is potentially the RAM, which has actually become significantly cheaper per gigabyte since when the PS5 came out. That's probably the number one thing that's let them make a profit over time. Is just RAM costs go down over time. It's making one of the components go from costing like $80 to $120 is what makes me go, yeah, so don't include the disk drive like they do now at $550, and then you use that cost to make the APU stronger, and that's it. And so it is quite doable, and I think that's where I have to give my spiel of if like, and personally, before I move on, actually, that's my opinion. I used to say $499. Already prices have gone up because of inflation right now and endless trade wars. But I think $549 is still like people would lose their minds. No, even if it didn't come with a disk drive. Do you agree?
Like lose their mind in that they're happy about the price?
Yeah, like it's like the PS4 is $399 and everyone freaks out. I think, and remember, this will be in 2 years. Who knows where inflation will go by then. I think $549 is people with jaws would drop that they're giving you something significantly better than the PS5 Pro for $549, but you need to buy your own disk drive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, particularly in that I think PS5 Pro had some sticker shock at that high of price. And so a lot of fans have kind of gotten in their heads. It makes sense. It's like, oh, well, PS5 Pro cost this much, then I need to be prepared that the next thing is going to be that much or more. And so the PS5 Pro is kind of doing them a favor where when they announce it and it's less than that, people might
That is my
maybe
opinion.
subconsciously feel like they're getting a deal on it.
Additionally, I put out a video about this. I believe the PS5 Pro at $699 was just overall just a market test. I mean, I had heard they didn't really want to launch it. They just kind of begrudgingly decided to because it was done, and it would probably be good for GTA 6, but it would also allow them to take in data. And what I said is, at $699, if this sells absolutely terribly, then they know they got to try for $500 again. If they can't keep it in stock for a year, I guess $800, here we come. And if it sells mostly well, they'll probably go lower, which is how I believe it went, as it sold mostly well, but it didn't sustain the sales long term that PS4 Pro did. At least doesn't seem like it. Who knows? To be fair, GTA was already out when the PS4 Pro launched, so we'll see if that affects that, and it'll just tick right back up. But yeah, and I don't even just mean that like an arbitrary price choice. I think they did this early enough where they, because I know this because I have documents over time for like that I've leaked for PS6, where it's like their early design for the PS6 was a little weaker than the final leak I just put out. So like I think they were like, well, if we need to cut costs, we have enough time to. If it doesn't sell well, if it sells really well, let's beef this thing up. And I think they're just they're meeting in the middle. So that's what I think they did with the PS5 Pro price. I don't think it's, in other words, I don't think it's like just about getting you, primed for a more expensive console. I think it's just higher or lower. It was a market test though.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And that's always the funny part to me right now is that before these things come out, I guess, I mean, PS5 Pro has maybe trailed off in sales, but
a little.
If you look at the Switch 2, which everyone complained was too expensive, and it's like, and that's what I always hear, and see people on Twitter or other people in the industry talking about like, well, they can't go too high because of the market right now. People don't have money. And I'm like, they might not have money. And everyone feels the effects of inflation with everything you buy, go to the grocery store. But it's like people carve out money for this clearly because they're buying Switch 2 in droves.
Well, it's also, it's devolving into a 2-class system where the RTX 4090 is the best selling high-end Nvidia card in history at, what was it? It's basically $2,000. It was supposed to be last week. It's basically $2,000. And then you have like the 4080, which to be fair, I thought was terrible price performance. So I think it should have sold bad. The worst selling 80, the 70 doing worse than usual. And then the 60 still selling well, despite I think being a pile of crap. Well, okay, so that's because most people only can afford 300. They can get a Ferrari or they can get a Kia, and that's basically all people can afford. So I think that's probably what you could see too with PS6 is they need to cater to the people that have had stagnant wage growth and continue to be ignored because they can't afford more. But there's never been more rich people to milk. Like, so it's a complicated market where I think, and that's also why I think they'll probably have a cheaper PS6 as well. But I guess to try to bring it back on subject, right? Because I did want your opinion on the,
yeah.
But so I think they could do 550 without a disk drive. I'm not gonna commit to a number really anymore. I'll just say that I continue to believe it will be between 550 and 700. But Xbox is trying to launch this handheld for 1,000 that I think should be 900, 800, maybe 700. They have competing handhelds like the Legion Go 2 or whatever it's called. There's the same APU, a bigger screen actually, and I think is a more interesting design. It's like a tablet hybrid, which if you're spending $1,000, I feel like you probably want this to do more than just gaming. But so I don't think that, like, seeing where Microsoft is going with pricing and their competitors is what makes me go, who knows? Like maybe 650 will feel like 399 did for the PS4 in 2027. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, because that's where I go. I think it will cost less than whatever the PS5 Pro does when it's announced, unless there's a heavy discount right before,
Right. And I wonder too, with this being, I mean, 2 devices with a handheld and the console itself, if they're kind of baking in like, well, to our most hardcore audience, we're selling them 2 things at once. And so if we kind of lower the price of one of them, then it could be a little easier to swallow getting both of these things.
Yeah. And that's, that's what I think also about the PlayStation 6 is they're making 2 APUs. Canis is the handheld one, which it's like a Steam Deck, actually a 6 nanometer die shrunk Steam Deck sized APU. This is going to be a tiny 10-watt cheap device that will basically give you, again, it's complicated, PS5 performance in older games, but in newer games be capable of significantly better experiences and probably even better graphics. That's something that would require like barely more cooling than like a phone. I mean, and they could sell that thing in a tiny box. Probably I would imagine something even smaller than like this. And then that's what they sell for $399 or $449. Who knows what prices are? But then it would almost be silly to not offer the stronger thing on top, and that's why I think they're going to do both.
Right. I wonder too, and I mean, you're much more aware about the timelines and when they start thinking about this, because it does feel a little surprising initially when we started to hear about this handheld version that Sony would want to jump back in. Obviously, I mentioned Nintendo revitalized the handheld business, but would it be that they decided to do this around the time of the Portal, which has done way, way better than they expected? That the Portal was like, maybe that they were like thinking about this handheld and then Portal comes out and they're like, holy crap, people actually really do like handhelds, even though we released this thing, which is basically like an old Wi-Fi chip and a crappy like screen, a crappy tablet screen with a controller bolted on both ends.
I think it's an ugly looking device. It looks like some modder on YouTube made it. It's literally just a tablet glued to a controller you cut in half.
Right. Yeah. But clearly, I mean, people, Colin is all about it. There are many people, thousands of people that love the Portal. And I think that those people are the ones that they've kind of, it's like, yeah, we would want this only, computing on the actual device.
Yeah. So I'm like opening up some documents here just to try to refer to them directly. And I guess I'll take this as the opportunity. I know that Mark Cerny, and we'll get into this now, like the AMD x Sony partnership video with Jack Hugh and that came out, I believe, on Wednesday of the previous week by the time this comes out or something. If not, no, it's Thursday. I think it was Thursday or something. Like Cerny said in a few years, and there's been a lot of discussions of like, well, now it's definitely exactly 2028 or something. Like I shared this with you before we started recording just so I could have some degree of backup. Like, I literally have a document showing when they're manufacturing these, and it's in the middle to even early 2027. And that's exactly when they manufactured the PS6. Right. So it was like, before I move on to like when they came up with the handheld price, I wonder, does that surprise you that they would, like when I sent you that document, was it surprising to you that like they had been planning as of like a year or two, like 2 years ago, to manufacture in the middle of 2027?
I think if we look at history of console life cycles, it doesn't feel surprising that it will be 7 years after this, the base PS5. I was thinking this morning, because we were saying that a lot of people are like, we don't want a new generation because it feels like this generation hasn't really begun. Maybe that's partially because of Sony's reduced first party output, that they feel like the PS5 doesn't have an identity with its exclusives. Partially what I was wondering this morning is that all of us, the people that are commenting online that have made this their career, we're now at the point where we're probably somewhere between the age of 25 to 40 or above. And when we were kids, generations of 7 years took up a large majority of the time we had been alive. And so now with us being, I mean, I'm 32.
Time moves faster. I know. I see where you're going.
And that's the thing. It's like, actually, 7 years, it feels like a much shorter time for us. But in terms of these consoles, it's like, no. There's an argument too that it's like maybe now, because these consoles are having diminishing returns as far as how much better they seem when they come out. But I don't know. For me, it's like, I'm just curious about what we're kind of at a turning point for graphics and compute, where it's like AI, machine learning, what it's going to do for these systems, where it's like, I'm not saying it's going to be like an insane revolution, but maybe it is. I mean, you know about that more than me. It's like I'm ready that at the 7 year turning point, if that is going to be the direction they're going. And you mentioned the Amethyst project. It's like, maybe there is going to be some really interesting stuff that's ready 7 years later.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but I instantly agree with you that has to be a factor in this. Because, and granted, I was too young to really remember. Like, I wasn't paying attention to this. Heck, I didn't even really use the internet until I was like a junior in high school. Although part of that was I was kind of a Luddite to technology back then. But which is so funny because now I ended up doing this. But like, I don't remember ever complaining about the PS2 being too short, or any console generation. New was like, whoa, great, the PS3's out, cool. Oh, good, my friend got a 360. I'm not mad. This is out. And like, as we get older, but also as there's diminishing returns, it is funny to think of people like it at least probably is perceived much more that nothing happened. Whereas, I mean, stuff did happen. Tons of people bought the consoles, and I guess I think they will be ready. What I keep coming back to, actually, when people bring this up of it being too soon, is I actually sometimes get a little aggro about it. And it's because I've seen this firsthand because it's my job. Before the PS5 came out, it was like I really started my channel early 2019. Like, I was like, it's going to come out next year, and it's going to have a solid state drive. And they're like, that'll cost $10,000. There's no way it could do that. And it's like, I'm not buying that. I barely just got my PS4. Cue comment you always see, dude, I just got back from Best Buy with my PS4 Pro. Come on, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then the PS5 set sales records. And then the PS5 Pro that I remember when I leaked there's going to be a PS5 Pro in like 22 or 23. It must have been 2022 or something, maybe 21 when I leaked that. I'm like, it's going to come out in 2023 or 2024, and it's going to be probably roughly around this. And then everyone like, that's way too soon. You just got a PlayStation because it's 2021. You will have not just gotten one in 3 years. And I just feel like I've seen this now firsthand professionally twice in a row where people say it's way too soon, and then it sets sales records. And so, and I'm certainly giving the haters more than enough fodder in the comments for this episode, and this will be another one. It's like, I don't take you seriously. People complaining. I don't, because you always buy it. So give me one gen where the Switch 2 doesn't sell out, and I will take it seriously that you have the perception of time to understand that in 3 years it will be. Like, it's very harsh, but it's like, I keep seeing it. I'm not going to buy it. Sales records. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, because I know I feel like Sacred Symbols had like a mutiny in 2020 when you guys were talking about we need more PS5 only games, and you might as well have said that the government should seize the means of production. Like, that was like, it was ridiculous.
Well, and I think particularly too in around that time frame, we were getting news of like, oh, well, they're remaking The Last of Us.
True.
And they're remastering Horizon. And this was at a time when PlayStation 5 first party, like, we had Demon Souls and we had, a few other things. And it's like, oh, down the pipeline, we're getting remakes of The Last of Us again, So.
And everyone bought it.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of, this comes up with what I said earlier about the Switch, where it's like everyone will complain about the price and then they'll buy it anyway. And I think with PlayStation 6, it will probably, I really think that, as particularly if the price is less than the PS5 Pro or the same, people are going to be like, oh, well, that sounds like a good deal. And the other thing too, is that I feel like as long as I've been paying attention, which is around the 360 generation, initially people, well, maybe not the 360 generation, that was a long generation. And I think that's
very
warped
long.
A lot of our mindsets. Like, dude, I got a 360 in 2006. I was in 6th grade, and the next generation of console came out, and it was my first year of college. So that was like, that entire gap of my life was one.
We're probably almost the same age then. That sounds about right to me.
I was born in 93.
Okay, I was born in 91. All right.
Okay, so yeah, pretty close. So, but yeah, and even I remember like early PS4, people were like, oh, the games look kind of the same. It's like, well, yeah, it's launch. And then PS5, it doesn't really seem like it's that much of an upgrade in terms of graphics. And it's like, well, for PS5 in particular, it's like, dude, which game are you playing? Because if you saw Demon Souls remake, it's like,
yeah,
that's a game that clearly, sure, it could run on PS4, but it's not going to look like that. So I don't know. I think people are they speak about being resistant to change, but the shiny new toy almost always wins out, you know.
Yeah. No, that's where it's like, it's hard for me to even have this discussion because it's not like some other subjects where there was change, there was pushback, there was a failed like, Concord did fail, like
Mm-hmm.
this is a situation where every time people say one thing and the opposite happens consistently. So I think that the PlayStation 6, and again, I think that you can find interviews. I don't know if it was Phil Spencer or who, where they said they thought the Xbox One was the start of the last generation. Like everything from here will just be higher frame rates and resolution and will scale down. They were wrong. You needed an SSD, and then that seemed to be the thought of the following gen. But it's like, yeah, but although they can technically run AI and ray tracing, the previous gen consoles, besides the PS5 Pro, really cannot. And I think the next gen, and I'm not saying this will be the last gen or there won't be some new revolutionary quantum, whatever.
Yeah.
Like betting against progress has never worked for anyone when it comes to technology. But I do think next generation is going to be much more of a baseline than we've seen since, I think actually it turns out the PS4 was a baseline that we were stuck to until
Mm-hmm.
now. And I think that the PS6 will be again, because it's one thing to be able to do technically next generation things, and then it's another thing to be able to do them very, very well. And I think next gen will be able to do ray tracing, AI, have a powerful CPU compared to previous generations. Like they'll do all of that very, very well. And that is where there will be that breaking point of, we thought it was the PS5, but I think it will turn out the PS6 is where there are games they make that just will not work on the previous generations. That's
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not super, I mean, I know about AI upscaling technologies and things like that. But I'm super curious and honestly excited about the idea of AI and compute. I think for a lot of people, AI has become a tainted word just because they think of open AI and generative AI and stuff like that. And it's like,
Losing
no,
their
no, no.
jobs and making our energy prices go up, because that's all we've
Right.
gotten out of it so far, really.
Right. But I mean, I always want handcrafted games
Yes.
made by individuals, but if AI is improving the tools in which to make these things and to make them more beautiful and more immersive, and it's like an insane breakthrough, then that's awesome.
This piece of content is brought to you by the Ace Magic F5A AI370 mini PC. That's right, this mini PC comes with an AI9 HX370 12-core processor with 890M integrated graphics that are capable of playing basically all the latest AAA games at reasonable settings and frame rates, unlike the APUs of yore. But it's not just that, it also has an Oculink port so that you can attach a dedicated graphics card while you're at home, and it also has a lot of the latest features like Bluetooth 5.4, Wi-Fi 7, dual RJ45 2.5G LAN Ethernet, and TPM 2.0 security module. And of course, like the best mini PCs, you can directly upgrade the SSD yourself. It has 2 slots, a PCIe Gen 4, and you can upgrade the RAM as well. If you are interested in this mini PC and you want to support Moore's Law is Dead, please check out the links in the description. Even clicking on those links helps the channel a ton. And then also, if you want to buy it, use offer code ACEFANF5A to get $130 or euros off, depending on which region you are in. Again, support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the AceFan F5A mini PC today. AI in charge of Xbox pricing writes in and says, AMD and Sony recently dropped a video detailing their plans for hardware. It seemed like their plans to boost performance, even though they plan on an affordable generation. The way they might do it is a massive increase in efficiency and computing, among other things, like adding dedicated Radiance cores for ray and path tracing, leaving the CPU and GPU to do other things. I'm curious what you think of this partnership and how both companies are using the other to better themselves. So my takeaway, I'm curious what yours was. I mean, we could get into the technical stuff, but frankly, I don't think no matter how much you understand like the Radiance cores, like it really matters until you see the results. Like better computer. I mean, that's kind of half of the conversation. Although I'll listen to Mark Cerny talk in that weird voice about that for as long as you want, because
Right.
he's quite entertaining ASMR. But my major takeaway was RDNA 2, I always heard was kind of designed for the PS5. My takeaway is RDNA 5 was designed for the PS6. And AMD's noticed that what Mark Cerny wants works really well. Like the Mark Cerny generations, those would have been the ones that use GCN, HD7000 series a long time ago for the PS4. And then Cerny skipped GCN like 1.1 and 2 and blah, blah. And then right when they got to Polaris and Vega, a hybrid of that is what they use for PS4 Pro. And those were the ones that sold best. That sold best for Radeon on desktop. And then you go RDNA 1, which did well, but then RDNA 2 is a fantastic. It seems like anytime they have an architecture that was at least half built with Sony in mind, that's the one that does the best. And I think that there's a realization here that on the Sony side, they realize they have a lot of clout now with AMD. And I do hear that from AMD engineers. They like working with Sony engineers. They like get lunch together and they help solve problems together. It's very collaborative compared to a lot of their other customers. But then on the AMD side, they realize, yeah, maybe we should listen to this guy. I mean, he seems to know the most efficient ways to make the best chips for the least price. And I think there's just more and more of like AMD, which is heavy brains, and Sony, which is more creative. They realize that when they work together well, they come up with the better graphics architectures than the ones in between when they didn't work together. That was my takeaway.
Yeah. It's clear that, I mean, you were joking about hearing Mark Cerny's ASMR talk, but it's clear too, just from listening to him speak, that he's clearly super, super smart. I think I'm trying to remember the exact fact. Like he programmed Marble Madness when he was a teenager. Like this guy is the real deal. And it's interesting too, just that he obviously knows how to engineer a console, but it's not just necessarily like picking parts off of a shelf and figuring out how to assemble them in the most cost efficient way that's beneficial to developers and the end customer, but like actually how the different devices work, and being in a collaboration with AMD gives them the chance to do that. And so my biggest question, and I've seen people commenting this about this video that they put out the other day, is that, I mean, AMD has been working with both PlayStation and Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And in that video, they're like, oh, and this is going to be going into AMD tech outside of the PlayStation.
They have to say that. They always do,
right?
Because they need Microsoft when it comes to like selling laptops.
Right. And I just wonder, like, from a Sony perspective, they're helping AMD, which in part is helping Microsoft on whatever, their new console. And I'm like, what is there going to be certain exclusivity in terms of what they develop for the PS5, even if the technology is generalized, that Mark Cerny is working on some kind of secret special configurations for that? Or do they, as you were saying earlier, they're like, oh yeah, if Microsoft ends up using, I mean, it sounds like they're working with AMD, some of this technology is going to make its way into that next Xbox. We don't care because we have beat them so thoroughly at this point.
So Chris Rich writes in and says, AMD and Sony sure are getting cozy lately. Would you be surprised if the RDNA 5 in the PS6 has some significant special sauce that Magnus does not, and perhaps AMD's own dedicated GPUs don't have either? Right. And I see this where people are wondering, like, is this... So here's what I'll say. The AMD people I talk to don't like working with the Microsoft people. I've actually heard some, like, I think one of the crazier quotes I heard, and I don't know how true this is, was a bit of a person said they heard a person say it thing. But they said when someone asked them, what do the Microsoft engineers think? The person said, oh, I wasn't aware Microsoft had engineers. So AMD's thoughts on Microsoft, maybe not at upper management, but at least at the engineering level, is that the best engineers are probably going to Nvidia and Apple and AMD and a few others. And I'm just being honest. This is their opinion, people. It's harsh, and then And then at Microsoft, these are the people that didn't get hired by Nvidia, and they kind of want AMD to do all the work for them. So there's no way that can help your relationship if you're and also like they sometimes feel like Microsoft is like the president in V for Vendetta on a giant screen screaming at them to get something done, whereas there's more give and take with Sony. And so that can't help. Like I would say, like the better relationship you have with a partner, I can come up with endless examples of this. Like TSMC likes working with Apple and AMD. They find Nvidia to be arrogant, which won't surprise anybody, and so they're more likely to share information and to so there's got to be some degree to that. Outside of that, I don't think that there's something where like, and we'll see, but if it was ever going to happen, it would be now. But I don't think there's something where like AMD is like, hey, by the way, Sony, here's the secret weapon. Like, I think the way it works is it's just Mark Cerny tends to be more ahead of the cart. Like, we need to do this. We need to do that. What are you working on? Oh, that's cool. RDNA 5 will have Radiance cores and this, but could we make the compute units work together better to do AI so we don't need an NPU? I don't know that they don't have one, but I'm starting to suspect they don't. And like that. And so it's like, oh, and then that might lead to AMD making more decisions. And because it was Sony's idea, they kind of have a heads up. Whereas with Microsoft, they go, what's on the shelf? And then they fill up their cafeteria tray and walk out. And if that's how both of the companies work, you can imagine the one that's the more back and forth kind of has an advantage because they came up with one of the ideas. I don't think they're like hiding anything from legally. They can't hide anything they're offering from Microsoft.
So do you think, I don't know, I might just be totally wrong on this, but is this type of relationship the reason why we see certain instances where the Series X is more powerful on paper, but the PS5 is delivering better results because of that less off the shelf approach and more intentionally designed in unity with the PS5?
I just think the PS5 is a better designed console for gaming. I mean, the first thing I have to say is people need, because the PS5 die is smaller than the Xbox Series X die and yet outperforms it. So that's just a better design for gaming. Having said that, the Xbox Series X is used for their xCloud streaming. Like they literally designed they pretty much had a similar design to the PS5 and then added more compute units and more RAM capacity so that you could have these like 40 gigabyte server versions. It's the same APU, but they give it 40 gigabytes or something, and it's built to run 4 1080p stream instances. And that necessitated more compute capabilities, which is actually better than the PS5. I'm not talking about teraflops. I'm saying it has different compute instructions and ways of doing the math that the PS5 just removed, actually, because they didn't think devs would ever use that. So you could argue it's less efficiently designed for gaming, but to be fair to Microsoft, it was designed to be a server chip that they would use for that and for their console. So it is less efficient at one thing because it can do two things.
Right.
Now, but I will say there were some key mistakes made in the Series X that make it perform worse. And it has nothing to do with anything with Sony and AMD. It was just befuddling decisions. And the number one thing is, so a lot of people get fixated on one spec, and there's like 10 specs that matter when it comes to performance. Right. The PlayStation actually has more TMUs, and it has the same amount of ROPs for rasterization, though I believe the PS5 actually has a higher pixel fill rate than the Xbox Series X. So this argument that the Series X, I remember being very outspoken about this and arguing with people in 2020, the argument that the Series X was obviously faster, it has a lower pixel fill rate. Like it is not obviously faster, actually. So the way they're designed is much more similar than you would think. All of the main components are the same. It's just the PS5 is clocked faster. And if there's 4 quadrants of compute on the Series X, they just added more little cores, but not more anything else. So they're kind of handicapped. And then it uses split memory. And I know you'll remember because this broke through during the 360 gen that the 360 had unified memory and the PS5, PS3 did not. The Series X and Series S have split memory. And why they decided to do that after that spanked Sony so hard one generation is beyond me. They literally have like, I don't know what it is, like a third of the RAM runs slower and you need a program around it. If they were to have, they literally have a bigger bus that's forced to share smaller memory pools that are split. in a normal system, the Series X would have 20 gigabytes and the Series S would have 16. If they would have done that, it would have beaten the PS5. And so the answer, and I hope I'm not putting you to sleep or anyone listening here, but like it had design flaws, and most of it was software. If they would have just given it the proper amount of RAM that the bus was built for and not split the memory like the PS3 did, I think it would have been a clear-cut performance win. No way around it. And it would cost them like an extra $10.
So do you think that comes down to that mistake was made because of what you heard about? It's like Microsoft doesn't have engineers, or that joke. Obviously they do, but that they are just not at the level of Sony.
I think there's something with the top down not getting it, and I don't know what they're paying Mark Cerny, but it should be more. I think there's something, because they keep making a similar mistake, but it's a different one. So it has to be the way the companies run, is what I would think. Like if we go back to Xbox One, that has 8 gigabytes of, I believe, DDR3, which even at the time was kind of a joke. And Sony had 8 gigabytes of DDR5. We're talking triple the bandwidth. Like, what an advantage. It's not the teraflops that won that gen. It was the fact that the RAM was 3 times faster. But the thing is, and this is a famous story that I think isn't talked about enough because it's quite funny. The PS4 originally was going to have 4 gigs of RAM, and the Xbox was going to have 8 in Xbox One. And that's because they knew they wanted to do their ESPN TV box crap. And so they knew they needed more RAM. And so from the get-go, they decided on this really slow RAM to get to there from the beginning, whereas Sony was like, we have a performance metric we need to hit, and let's do it. And apparently in the last year before launch, Randy Pitchford, yes, the one making everyone mad on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
He said, and he looked a little nervous when he said this. I think he realized he may have broken an NDA, but like apparently he said to Mark Cerny directly in a meeting when Cerny was pitching them, they do this. They design the console, they go to the developers and say, this is what it's going to be. What do you think? Randy Pitchford said 4 gigabytes isn't enough. And Mark Cerny in an interview said that he almost had a breakdown. He's like, but it's perfect. We have to do this. And he's like, but can't you use 8 gigabyte with the newest memory that just came out if you put it on both sides of the board? And he's like, we could, but that's going to get into a whole fight with leadership over if we can afford this. And Randy Pitchford apparently said to him, like a direct quote, you will win by default if you give it 8 gigabytes. I'm just telling you. Like this will be like 360 getting the extra RAM last minute versus PS3. And he did it, and that the rest is history. And so there was this weird decision early on by Microsoft that we have to do this. And then last minute, we didn't make any changes to make that better, and Sony was willing to. They did the same thing with the Series X. It was built to have this much RAM. I heard, actually, you'll find this funny. It was actually, I guess it's long enough ago I can say it. Someone who worked at Nvidia, who had a friend that Microsoft, told me that they almost gave the Series X 12 gigabytes. Series S. Series S, 12 gigabytes instead of 10. And it would have cost them an extra $20 and long-term $5. And they decided on 10. And now that's why they have all these performance issues. And so it just feels like there's an example with Series S. There's an example with Xbox One. It seems like there's always a decision by management at the last minute to cut some cost that crushes performance. And I think that gets us into the people in charge of Microsoft are not gamers. They are not engineers. They're suits that want to sell you a Microsoft 365 subscription, even though you can get it for cheaper for $40 for life. Like these are the people that I think come in last minute and raise Game Pass prices. These are the people that come in last minute and just basically ruin any good idea Phil Spencer has. Although I'm not going to give Phil Spencer too much credit at this point. Not saying it's not his fault, but I don't know what and maybe it's just a vibe opinion, right? But like what you think about that, because that is the best answer I can give you is I just think Mark Cerny made the hard decision to give the PS4 more RAM. Microsoft didn't. And they keep doing that. I don't think the people in charge of Xbox are gamers or engineers.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me, particularly right now with Microsoft, is just the lack of vision, and it feels like throwing stuff at the wall to see what works and what doesn't work. I think you're probably right about a suit facing, corporate facing decision making over people who understand these types of things. And I think that, PlayStation has got accused of that a lot when Jim Ryan was the president. But
my favorite game is the latest Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
That guy, I think fair criticism.
Right. Fair criticism. But I think that in general, maybe not in every department, but at least when it comes to the hardware, it's like maybe they're just insanely lucky to have a guy like Mark Cerny who has the vision, knows, in particular with the story with Randy Pitchford, like knows when to listen to feedback that is actually important and when to make the correct sacrifices for long term. Clearly, Xbox at that time with the Xbox One, their vision was completely screwed up with the focus on like, oh, well, people are using these consoles for Netflix. So that's where they're spending the most hours. So let's design the console around watching TV. And it's like, you don't get it.
They used it for that. That's not why they bought it, though.
Right. Exactly. So Microsoft, I mean, right now in particular with, the Game Pass prices increases and the new console I am so curious about.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if you had anything on the show. I don't want to skip ahead, but
no, let's start talking about Xbox. And by the way, I have a funny analogy for your, like, everyone uses Netflix, so let's make a Netflix console with Xbox One. That would be like saying, the data suggests that most of the time in a car, people are listening to podcasts. So this is going to be the podcast car.
Right.
But that's not why they fucking bought the car, though. I mean, like, that's not what's going to make them get this over another one, is having the most exclusive podcast when you're driving it.
Right.
Whether it's tech stuff or honestly choices political campaigns make, too many focus groups, too much data, and you're like, what do people actually buy something? What do people actually vote for something for? And I think, I never thought about how silly that is, that they're like, we need a Netflix console because Netflix is successful. It's like we need a tablet Wii because everyone's buying iPads. It's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's you're definitely right about sometimes focus groups, you can have too much data, or unfortunately just it's good to have data. It's about having the right person on the top that can interpret it correctly, like what that actually means and what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into Xbox Magnus then, because trying to think of like where I wanted to go with this, because what were you talking about? Like I closed the video, like talking about how the reason Xbox, and there's an excellent Laura Fryer YouTube video that's making the rounds right now. She's
I saw it.
Yeah. And she basically talks about how Microsoft Xbox fell apart because they didn't really know what gamers want and stopped caring about them. And they really lost what she really said is they like lost a soul. There was no soul. There was no reason to get an Xbox, to get Xbox games, to care about owning an Xbox. And that all deteriorated basically over the Xbox One era and later. And I would argue actually even late 360 gen. And because of that, like, it just seems like it's kind of doomed. And the only way Xbox Magnus, their next generation, is going to succeed, like a big point I make at the end, is the only way you win a console war against people who know what they're doing is you have to be more creative and have the best games and gimmicks, so that with a powerful brand, so that like with the Switch 2, and I show a picture of that in the video, like people will pay more than they probably should for your hardware because they want that gimmick and they want that experience and they're willing to pay for it. Or the other way to win is to actually be the best, like have Sony being the best at making the exact level of performance at the lowest price, mass produced, shipped at the right time, having an excellent supply chain. That's what Sony does best. They've always been a hardware company that's at its best when the software gets out of the way and they just make the good hardware. So the third way is software. The third way to win would be you can't beat Nintendo in creativity, and you can't beat Sony in logistics. What you can do, though, is you could have software that makes, and features that makes your console that costs more feel like it's worth paying more for, which they should do because they are a software company. And I feel like Xbox has always gotten in its own way. It should have been a hybrid console since Xbox One. Like, and the fact that it hasn't until probably next gen is mind-blowing to me. But I wonder what you think about, because that does seem to be the direction they're going in.
Yeah. I think there's definitely, we've talked a lot about hardware direction mistakes that Xbox has made. And I'm glad you brought up that Laura Fryer, right? Her video. Because a point that she always brings up is that Microsoft and Xbox just forgot how to make good games. And I'm not saying that Microsoft has not made any good games recently. They've made good games, but they are not making games to the caliber that they did during the Xbox and the Xbox 360 generation. Certainly, in terms of their overall impact and their market share of what people are interested in. And it's unfortunate too, because a lot of the companies they bought that should have given them that home run didn't deliver. I think most importantly on Starfield, where it's like, it seems obvious. It's like, oh, you bought Bethesda. You have
there were 2 years where they're like countdown to the death of PlayStation because they had Starfield. It was incredible.
Right. And I think on paper, and I think for a lot of people, it makes sense. It's like, dude, you bought the team that made Skyrim, Fallout. Of course, their next thing is going to be huge. Of course, that's going to drive sales. And then it's Starfield. It's like, oh no, what happened? So it's unfortunate. I mean, growing up, I was super into 360 because Sony priced me out when I was a kid of getting a PS3. So, and dude, I mean, Halo at that time, that was for a kid in his early teen years. That was like the most desirable, video game you could possibly make.
Yeah, you were playing it or you were going to a friend's house to play it. Like,
right.
That was that game.
It was, I mean, Halo was the game you played it, whether it's online, you would get together with your friends. It was everything. And now it's just like, so I was saying that Xbox still is making good games. Like Forza Horizon is super successful and people are really into that. But they're not making games that really dominate at all. So I'm very curious, and I actually wanted to talk about this next generation console. And this is something we've talked about a ton on Sacred Symbols, is the idea of the PC console hybrid. And I'm sure that when Colin was on here with you, that this was a large part of the conversation, is just this idea of like, if you give users the ability to purchase a game on Steam instead, circumventing your own store.
This is one of his go-to rants right now. Like, how could they? But he's right.
He's right. Exactly. And the question I wonder too, and since you know so much more about the technical side, the thing that I've been trying to work through is that I'm like, okay, if this is a PC console hybrid, are they sacrificing backwards compatibility with Xbox Series for this next console? Because that, if true, is crazy to me. That is actually insane. I mean, I don't know from a technical perspective, like, could it be this piece? It runs Steam. It has a more standard version of Windows, their gaming Windows that they have out now. It has that, but it also runs your old Series X library and past that. Like, what are your thoughts on this? As far as like, will they have to sacrifice backwards compatibility?
Right. And so that was something, I believe that was a leak I put out with Colin when he came on the show. Like, it was one of those things where when I'm preparing the notes, I have a bunch of, listener questions submitted ahead of time. And I'm like, yeah, okay, there's this one, there's that one. And I'll see something and I'll go, I don't actually know the answer to this. And I'll just throw it to a few developers or someone at AMD and go, how would you answer this fan's question? Like, what do you think's going on? And what the feedback I got right before we started recording, I believe it was that one, was a bunch of developers saying, oh, if they try to force us to push our games onto PC that we mean for Xbox, we're going to riot. Like, we will sue them. Like, that they can't do that. It's in the contract. And so what that led to was me making putting out a leak that the X community notes said I couldn't be right about, which is that the handheld will not play previous gen Xbox titles natively. It doesn't. I was right about that, despite Elon Musk's community telling me I'm wrong. So, but it could be different with Magnus, right? Because this is actual custom hardware. Actually, there's a leak out there, not from me, but from someone else that I think it could be true, where I had heard they had a dedicated handheld APU custom built for and actually used ARM cores, but they canceled it because they just didn't think it was worth it. Someone else said it was because there was a 10 million order minimum AMD wanted for it to be worth their trouble to support this. And Microsoft couldn't guarantee a 10 million would sell. And so AMD canceled it, and Microsoft just was forced to buy off-the-shelf parts for the ROG Xbox Ally X. And so that's where it loses the backwards compatibility and everything. I believe that Magnus will use, so it uses probably a somewhat custom CPU chiplet that also is like the video out on it and the AI part. And then it attaches that to a dedicated graphics card die that can also be paired with an HDMI out basically attachment for a graphics card for PC. So it's like half custom this time. And with the fact that it's half custom and they've had years to plan for it, I believe there should be a way to give it to them. But I would say I would not be so sure they will have backwards compatibility next gen. Although my suspicion would be because the CPU part is custom, you could still have a security check core in there to where only this can run the Xbox 361 series emulator. And if you put a gun up to my head, I'd say I think Magnus probably will backwards compatibility, but it will have some special boot mode to do it. The rest of PC won't get it. And it will be the last time they worry about this, probably, as they will probably do a proclamation with next gen that all games have to be play anywhere to be on the Microsoft Store. That way, kind of like PS4 after PS3, this is kind of their moment of that. Over time, people will care less and less and less that you can't play your old Xbox games on there. So that's what I think is going to happen. I will say if they don't have that, that's going to be the biggest slap in the face to their customer base ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit too late, I think, to make that kind of move, because I think it was Phil Spencer on when he was on like Kind of Funny or something, said like we lost the worst generation to lose because people started investing in digital libraries, and it's very hard to get someone to move over when they've invested in a single platform. And it's like, you know, I understand at some point the games people are buying now will be old and they won't care about them anymore, but still a lot of investment. And I think now, I mean, particularly in this past week where there's been these rumors swirling around, or whether they will or will not do a console,
which I think they will.
Yeah, I think it sounds like they will. What that looks like is, you know, remains to be seen. But either way, there's a question in people's mind about the investment that they're making in terms of what games they purchase and where they buy them.
Yeah, and you know, it's so funny. When I put out that leak too about like the handheld not having backwards compatibility, there were two reactions. There was people who were clearly predominantly console players screaming, "Are you serious?" And like, this is the biggest bombshell of all time. And then there were the PC gamers going, "Duh, we know it's like," but it's not obvious to their own fans. A lot of the stuff they're doing. If you're a PC gamer, you expect this type of stuff, and you can look at that device and go, "Oh, probably not. It looks like it's just a PC." But if you're a console gamer, you're like, "What? That can't be true." And I think, and I think I did say this to Colin when he was on. What Microsoft needs to do is that, look, let's put it this way: their heart's clearly not in it. You know,
right?
So continuing to fight this war that the suits don't give a shit about is just gonna waste more money and make people more mad at the Microsoft brand, which was the opposite. Xbox was actually created to try to make Microsoft cool, and it actually kind of did for 10 years. But now I feel like they're losing that, and they really should at least try to put some effort, maybe hire Fryer back, and like try to do this well, because when you see the uproar that happened with the Game Pass price hikes, it's clear that there actually still are 10 to 30 million hardcore Xbox gamers. Like, they didn't all, they're not zombie subscriptions. They weren't quiet. They didn't roll over. They all freaked out online. And so there is money to be lost if they don't have a good bridge generation. They need to give people something that the Dreamcast never gave. Sega never gave their fans with the Dreamcast, which is, this is our last console, but you don't feel like a rug was pulled out from under you. Like, if they do that well, they could transition 20 million paid subscribers to Windows in a time where Windows subscriptions are falling apart and where Steam is ready to drink their milkshake when it comes to gaming OS. Like, so I don't know. I don't know what else it is to say to what I'm saying here, but like, yes, but they need to handle this well, or they don't need to, but there is a lot to be lost if they don't. There is.
Right. And I wonder too, with a transition to a, you know, more of a PC like console, I love PC gaming. I mentioned earlier, I have a 4090. I play a lot of games on PC as well as my consoles, but PC gaming is simply not as easy as console gaming.
Mm-hmm.
You run into problems all the time. Most recently, one of the big things was like the security BIOS thing that people needed to change in Battlefield.
Mm-hmm. Which was easy once I checked it out, but still,
right.
It sounds scary, and I was annoyed that I had to do it.
Right. But I wonder, in particular, you were saying, I think before the show started, we were talking about like Windows kind of being ass now. And it's
it's not 2005 anymore. What's the excuse, guys? Make your operating system work.
Right. And I just wonder if they transition to more of a PC hybrid, what is the end? Are console gamers ready to put up with PC problems? Which if you are used to PC, you know how to fix those things. But for a console player, they might not be ready to be like, oh, this game isn't booting right. This game is, do I have to, what's VSync?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're giving console players PC options. And some of them have no idea what the difference, should I have VSync on and off? Should I be running this full screen? What type of anti-aliasing? I don't know what the difference between any of these are. You know what I mean? So it's like, you might be opening a can of worms that you don't want to for them.
Yeah. And that's why the way I'm looking at it, at least from a point of optimism, is my hope is that this makes PC better, that this isn't the PSC-fication of an overpriced console. This is an expensive console bringing console benefits to PC gaming, because that's what Valve successfully did with SteamOS. And if Microsoft doesn't, they're going to lose more and more and more market share to Steam. And that, who knows, maybe they get their own Office distro. They could really start eating Microsoft's lunch here. I think that's what I'm hoping, is that no, they have like and again, I think that the handheld is a beta for this. They have a more low level, more streamlined, like apparently the handheld, the Xbox handheld can like download the shader cache ahead of time, and it's optimized for that. Like, console gamers don't know this, but there's something like called shader cache that has to be compiled per PC because your systems are all different. Whereas on console, they're like, it's a PS5 or a PS5 Pro, it's pre-compiled. And that's why load times and like there's less stutter. That's all better on console right now because of that. If they could bring that to PC, make it so that there's a mode you just boot up and it's game mode, and game mode has Steam and, the Xbox Store. And then the Xbox Store promises you, remember, if you buy it on here, it'll also work well on an Xbox handheld. It'll also work well on your other Microsoft devices. Maybe that can, make it just make Windows gaming better. And again, by the way, I never answered. Like, you brought up the thing of like, how will Microsoft make money on this if if they allow Steam? I think that they see the writing on the wall. They know they just need to take what they can get, and they will probably sell their console for like a $100-$200 profit. I mean, that's probably what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. I wonder too, you brought up Valve and Steam right now. I have a clip saved from like a year and a half ago on Sacred Symbols where I talked about the idea of Valve entering the console space. And I wonder partially if part of Microsoft's positioning with this new console is Valve is a sleeping giant that is stirring. And they clearly have neglected Windows gaming for so long. And now, with SteamOS, it's not quite ready yet. Like, I have a downstairs PC.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned earlier, Jimmy Champagne was telling me, he's like, dude, you got to get Bazite on this thing. And I'm like, not quite yet, because it has an Nvidia card in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I'm sure that Microsoft is like, oh no, like if we lose this, then like we don't have gaming at all. With a free, if there's a free option from Valve that runs games better, not so hot.
Yeah, and so that's where I think it's becoming a situation where they've almost like a overextended empire. They realize they've tried too much. The outskirts of the empire are collapsing. It is time to fall back and make the core good. And the core is Windows. And it always should have been. And these things with like, I've long ranted about games for Windows Live. God, that DRM sucked for PC gamers.
Mm-hmm.
It was unnecessary. Or the fact that like Gears of War 2 still isn't on PC. What the hell? It's a Microsoft game. Why has this not been ported? Like, they are distracted by making this device that is okay if they cared about it, but if they don't, you need to work on one thing. And so that's what I think about it. I mean, I don't know what else really to say about Magnus except that, I mean, it looks a bit faster than the PS6, but I have to imagine you agree with this point. Like, I think like at most 30% faster. And with the optimizations PlayStation 6 will have and the monitors, like if the Xbox version is you can play on your monitor at 4K 144 with maybe one extra setting turned up, and then the PS6 version is just locked 4K 120 on a big screen TV. I don't think that's anyone on PlayStation is going to care about that, except for the tiny amount who argue online. Am I wrong?
No, yeah. And the people that do care about that already probably have a sick gaming rig, the PC rig that it's like. And I mean, it comes back to what Phil Spencer admitted himself, that they lost the worst generation to lose. And so I think that even if Xbox came out with a considerably more powerful console, it might not matter at this point because people are so invested in, if they're a console gamer, they're so invested in the PlayStation ecosystem. And they don't even have the card about, I mean, Game Pass arguably can be a good value for a certain type of person still at $30 a month. But that type of person now at $30 is much smaller. And so there isn't even that card. It's like, oh, we'll get the Xbox to play the Xbox games. And they don't have that either because they're releasing their games on PlayStation. So it's like, what really is
the other
there?
day I saw my friend on PlayStation, Brock, and it said playing Gears of War Remastered. I'm like, how the times have changed. There it is. There's my friend online playing Gears of War on his PlayStation. This piece of content is brought to you by the fans that support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And it does need supporting. From personal attacks from tech elites that get mad when we tell you that they are lying to gamers and their own shareholders, to legal attacks from mega corporations that cost the team time and money. This is expensive and often very stressful work. And it's work that doesn't depend on access journalism, nor depend on NDAs or agreements that would sanitize our opinions and hold us back. No, nothing holds us back, and we are independently funded, and we use said funding to do things like pay professional renderers to show you products before they come out so that the sources that provided us the original pictures don't get in trouble. Or we also create bonus content like Die Shrinks, where you have videos and interviews coming out multiple times a month exclusively to reward our patrons with the extra content that we know they would like to see, whether it's inside scoops or more in-depth conversation and stuff that we just know wouldn't profit if we put it out publicly, but it doesn't need to profit for our fans on Patreon because it is self-funded. And so if you want any of that bonus content, or you want to support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead, or honestly, if you just want to support me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, or Jesse and Maurice so that we have food on the table every day, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And to those that already support us there, I'll see you on the Discord. AI in charge of Xbox pricing writes in again and says, do you think Microsoft will walk back pricing for Game Pass? It doesn't have to be direct, but maybe indirectly by creating a new tier. I don't think the outrage would have been bad if pricing stayed the same and they came out and said future games and extra rewards will only launch on this new tier. You know, well, that is kind of what they did, but yeah, so I believe what they did is they like added more features to most tiers, but then the $20 tier got its name changed, which was probably the biggest mistake. And that doesn't get day one games anymore. And if you want day one games, you need to pay $30. And there's been a huge uproar, like the website crashed with how many people were canceling. Do you think they will walk that back, or what would you advise Microsoft do at this point?
I mean, this is such armchair analysis right now, just because it's obviously severely complicated, but
and who knows, maybe it will have changed by the time this comes out, so give us a break, everyone.
True. Yeah, from what it sounded like, I think it was I'm maybe not remembering this right, but was it Jason Schreier that was reporting about how Microsoft lost $300 million because of Call of Duty specifically?
I don't know, that sounds like something he would have reported on. I did see the headline. I don't remember who said it.
I wonder, surely it's not just Call of Duty that's pushing this Game Pass price increase, but I could see Suits looking at the numbers and be like, look how much money we lost because of this one game. this is why people were signing up. We need to increase the price in order to offset some of this loss. And I wonder if Microsoft fans, I mean, a company would never be this honest, is be like, look, we know we promised you day one games. We are removing Call of Duty in order to keep the price of Game Pass the same. You know, I wonder if I'm sure there's a lot of Xbox gamers to be like, cool, great. Because I would rather have that. Obviously, Microsoft would never present it that way to people. But I kind of think at this point with Microsoft that they, you know, it's clear to me at least, like Phil Spencer is not in charge.
Oh, no. I mean, literally a year ago, he said, you're not going to expand the market with $1,000 consoles, making fun of the PS5 Pro. A year later, $1,000 console. I mean,
yeah. And so I think that the suits are kind of just like, well, the people that are here, they don't own any games without us because we've trained them on our console. They maybe have purchased a few games, but just milk them because they're still getting that. If you are, as I was saying earlier, that type of particular gamer, you're still getting a good value. It's a very narrow lane, but I think at this point, Microsoft doesn't care about pissing off their hardcore because it's, as you were saying earlier, that they're kind of tired of fighting, I think, at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's where I ask, like, do you think, because at this point I kind of see the brand, and I know this sounds very harsh to, I'm sure, some Xbox fans listening right now, if you're still with us by now, but it's just my honest and Dustin's honest opinion. Like, I think this is a managed decline. This is clearly not a plan to bounce back. It's an AOL.com plan to milk as the line goes down as much as possible. Do you think that might not be true, though, that there is a way to bounce back? Because to be honest, the only way that happens, it's going to take 3 generations of fighting to sell 15 million units, then 30, then 60. It's going to take a long time to get back to where the 360, let alone the Xbox One, was.
Yeah, I mean, for them to bounce back, or I mean, even lowering, like saying like, oh, never mind, we're going to put Game Pass back the way it was. It still doesn't solve the problem of the fact that people are just overall, I don't want to say people in general, because clearly Xbox has its people that love their first party stuff. And I'm not saying they've never put anything out that was good from their first party recently, but they just don't have the cachet with games anymore. And the games that they really pushed of being, these are the games that you need to have an Xbox for, have fallen flat. Halo Infinite was one of them. Starfield was one of them. Mm-hmm. And neither one of those are bad games, but they certainly didn't live up to the
they weren't Uncharted or Halo 2, you know.
Right. And even games too that I think that were a little bit more insulting, or like Hellblade 2 in particular was propped up to be a game it never was supposed to be. Yeah. It's not a bad game at all, but it was never going to be. I mean, sure, it's insane visually. It's beautiful, but it's never going to be. They're like,
this is a God of War killer. I'm like, what? It's not the same game at all.
And certainly some of that is not Microsoft's fault. That's fans that were pumping up things unrealistically. But I in the way I think kind of, they may not have pushed it, but they set the angle in the right direction for people to run with it.
Yeah. Let me ask this. Chris Rich writes in and says, with Magnus, let's say that Microsoft continues to sell it as a conventional console, so that any contracts they've signed on the basis of having a console version of a game are still valid, but then push OEMs to sell Magnus based as a PC alternative APU for laptops or desktops. Do you think that would be an effective strategy? And what other strategies would you suggest? I don't, that's more of a technical sided thing, but I'm wondering what you think about if Microsoft had Magnus as like a $1,000, $1,200 console that's faster than the PS6, but can play Steam games and all this other stuff, which I think could be cool, because from a PC perspective, I mean, like Asus is trying to sell you pre-built desktops for $2,500. That would be weaker. So this could really disrupt the PC gaming side. So if they had that, but then they also just sold the APU and you could just build your own desktop with it, do you think that's a good idea, or do you have any thoughts about if they were to do that? Because it sounds like that's a possibility.
I think that actually, in some ways could be really neat. You see this conversation a lot about games where, or, people online, they're like, well, if you just bought a PC, you wouldn't have this problem. You wouldn't have to worry about your frames or whatever. And it's like, I think a lot of times people don't take in the perspective how expensive PC hardware can be.
Yeah.
And particularly recently, it's nowhere near console pricing. So if you could take the console model of like, we are able to get these parts at scale and charge less for them because of that, and apply it to a box that runs Steam and PC stuff, then that would be kind of interesting, that you could lower the price of entry to get into the PC ecosystem. Because I know, like, I always hear anecdotally, like, there are kids now that kids aren't asking for a PlayStation or an Xbox. They're asking for a PC. And then a parent looks at that and they're like, you can get your a $500 PC, but you probably shouldn't.
This just happened with one of my friends. I woke up to a random wall of text. My friend, his name is Manish. He's a doctor. I think he's now finally gone through the decade of being poor and having no free time, and he finally has that doctor money now. And he was like, yo, I want to play games again. It's like a decade of not having time to. And he's like, could I get a 4K gaming PC for like $1,500 to $1,800 or something? And I'm like, yeah, you can get a 9070 XT, 9800X 3D, that'll do that. And he apparently has a 4K 240 hertz monitor. I'm like, yeah, that would be good for that. And then I said, but if you want to save money, you could just get a PS5 Pro or something. It even has basically games at 4K 60, even some at 120. And he's like, oh, for 700, should I just do that? And I was like, well, one of them will give you more options, but you basically have to spend twice as much as a Pro to get to twice the performance. Anything in between that, you're kind of just getting Pro for 50% more at best, really. And then I said, but also, if you want to play Death Stranding 2 and GTA 6 and all these other games, that's actually not on PC. And then he just bought a PS5 Pro. So this is a real problem the PC landscape has, where the strongest builds are the best. The cheapest can be actually cheaper than the PS5 and be serviceable. But if you want that 60 hertz decent resolution stuff, it's a no man's land right now.
Right. Yeah, it's and two, I mean, it's tough with PC, because even, when I got my 4090 car, or I got my 4090 in a pre-build, and it's funny because I think now at one point a few months after I bought this PC, the 4090 itself cost more than the entire computer itself. So that market is always shifting around.
Yeah, I got mine for $2,000 through a deal with a sponsor, but it was $2,000, and now it's worth $2,300 on eBay. It's worth more than what I got it for. Yeah,
and the other thing too is just if you're getting into the PC market, it's like, okay, well, at some points it's better to build it yourself, and then maybe you're not technically minded or know how to do that. There are, you can buy a pre-build, and the quality of these different pre-build manufacturers is vastly different and at vastly different prices. So it's a lot more for someone that's not in that space that wants to get into it. There is a lot to take in versus PS5 Pro. It does this, and it does it overall pretty well, other than the things we mentioned earlier.
Well, yeah, and there's a vacuum there. Microsoft can be successful. AI in charge of Xbox pricing, well, he's really dominating this episode, writes in again. It says, with the collapse of Xbox, do you expect more players to come in and try to fill the void? If it was a Steam home console, what would Valve need to do for it to succeed? And should they go a hybrid route in what Xbox should have done a long time ago and have a PC controller? Or should they go about it the way Sony is going about it and have it come with a standard controller that is mostly just about playing games?
It's really hard to say. And that's why I feel like this whole move is so interesting, and feels somewhat reactionary to Valve as well. Just because with a Valve console, and maybe able to do some of these things we're talking about as far as lower the barrier to entry into PC. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I've long thought, in terms of who could replace Xbox, it's a pretty short list of who is even theoretically possible. Like Apple comes to mind. They actually tried to. It had a VCR built into it, for those who don't know. And maybe Google, although I don't know if I bet on Google to do anything new anymore with how badly Stadia turned out. I mean, that was bad. So I think that pretty much would just leave someone like Samsung, but I don't think they'd do it, or Valve. I think if anyone was going to replace them, it would just be Valve kind of trying to do what Microsoft's going to try to do with Magnus, but do it better. And that's something that's funny, because it's interesting that Microsoft might make a hybrid console right when they're going to have to compete with more hybrid consoles from Steam, and it might be them trying to get ahead of what they know the next war is.
Yeah. I mean, Valve, I want them to join. I want them to fight in the console like space so bad, just because with them being privately owned, they are so consumer focused, like pro consumer in so many ways, whether it's the refund policy or the fact that they're like, no, you cannot put ads in your game. Like, we will not allow that on our store. Like, I'm sure that a lot of big publishers probably hate Valve for a lot of these decisions. And so for them to kind of bring that energy to a new space would be awesome.
Another Chris writes in, and he says, "Hi, Tom and Dustin. Will Project Amethyst bring more lockdown settings to the settings menu, or be more open to being able to have more settings in your games?" And the way I'm going to take this question is, where do you think this should go? Because what did we see? The PS4 Pro, and there were every now and then there'd be a game that would let you to choose a frame rate mode or change the FOV slider, but that'd be pretty much it. Anyway, after PS4 Pro, it just became standard for all consoles to have a high frame rate, a low frame rate mode. And then now you're starting to get somewhere it's like high frame rate ray tracing, low frame rate ray tracing, high frame rate no ray tracing, mid rate. Like, there's like 6 options, and I am of the opinion that it really should just be 2 to 4, ideally 2 options, maybe 3, like with how many monitors types there are now. And then you get an FOV slider and maybe like a 40 FPS cap or option, or like I'm actually, and it might surprise people to hear this, despite being someone also with an RTX 4090 and mostly games on PC, I'm someone that does not think consoles should have a ton of settings.
Yeah, I think there are examples of games that went too far. I think with options on console, Hogwarts Legacy, they had a bunch of different options, and then you could also choose to like unlock and lock the frame rate, so that like changed each setting as well. Right now, Ghost of Yotei, I think they have like performance, quality, the ray tracing, and a ray tracing pro mode. So there's 4 modes on Pro, which I think if you're going to have a pro console, then I think having those options, because that's the type of market of people that are going to want to choose. But Sony seems to really leave it up to the developers to decide what kind of options they want to do. It's very clear Sony first party games kind of have this standard like performance. There's like normally with PS5 Pro, there's been quality performance and then like pro performance mode, which is like a hybrid between the two. But so I think it's not necessary to give too many options to console gamers, because they just don't. A lot of people don't even go in there and look at those at all. They just play the game as soon as it starts and don't even think about it.
Yeah. I guess the biggest complaint I will have is that Borderlands 4 launched without an FOV slider and had a FOV at launch that looked like you were wearing a cardboard box on your head. So yeah, if we could at least avoid that. All right. I have a few more questions here. Techno writes in, is Nintendo scared about the PlayStation 6 Portable, or do you think it'll be another flop? Well, I don't think it matters if the PS6 Portable sells well, because it plays PS6 games. I think it's very different than the Vita, personally. Right. But what would you answer, or how would you answer this question?
So I think, to answer each question, is Nintendo scared? No, absolutely not. I don't think this affects them really at all. People buy Nintendo for Nintendo games. And so even if there is an alternative that runs third-party games better, it does not matter, because it does not play Mario Kart. And so it really does not. Nintendo is either someone's main option or it's a side option to have in addition because of that first party. So I don't think they're worried about it at all. I honestly don't know how well the handheld will do. As we talked about earlier, the Portal has done way better than I expected it to do, and I kind of think that thing's a piece of junk. But I seem to be in the minority of Portal owners that think that. So clearly, there is a hunger for high performing handhelds. We've seen that with the general interest in Steam Deck. While it is still a niche device, like for not being sold at retail and being sold only through Valve, it's done very, very well. So clearly in the hardcore space, there is an appetite for it. So I'm really wondering when we see a first party and not like Xbox's half step, like a true proper, this is a PlayStation portable or a PlayStation 6 portable. It plays the main games, how the market will respond to that, because we haven't seen something quite like that.
So hasn't Sony said too, this would be like decades ago, but like that, well, the PlayStation Vita didn't sell remotely as well as they wanted it to, that the fan base that was there bought tons of games, was incredibly hardcore. I think Colin's talked about this because you guys have published a couple games, and you found that like no matter how many copies you made for a physical Vita release, like a decade after the Vita was basically ended, always sold out. Right.
Yeah.
Like that was, so I mean, I would wonder if what we'll see, and who knows, maybe it will just sell gangbusters. Maybe like this is just the Vita failed because it was the wrong device for the wrong time, and they could have been selling one this whole time that would have done well. Maybe we'll learn that. The Switch 2, well, the Switch 1, I should say, definitely seems to have suggested that nothing happened to the handheld market. You just needed to make a good handheld. But
right.
I think at a minimum, this thing's going to sell at least 10, 20 million, the handheld version, and it will have a very hardcore fan base.
Yeah. And the biggest difference, I mean, between what PlayStation portable consoles in the past and now is just that the proprietary game issue, where a developer looks at Vita and is like, well, it's going to cost us only a little bit less. Instead, we could make a PS3 game that has a way bigger install base. We could charge more for it. It's like, why would we even make a Vita game? Even PlayStation first party was in that case, where it's like, why would we make?
Do you really want
proprietary software?
Are you really happy that Killzone Mercenary wasn't on PS4? I mean, are you actually happy that it was there instead of Vita? I mean, because most people would say they'd just rather it be on the home console.
Right. Yeah. So, and I mean, that's why, I mean, the indie space really flourished on the Vita. So with this new device where it's like, you're not buying a proprietary piece of software just for this handheld. You're buying something that is going to have cross save functionality with the PS5. You can take your games on the go. That's the thing that I think made the Switch really succeed, is that the hybrid approach. And while, I mean, I guess it would have a hybrid approach with the dock, but it's really the cross save that makes it this hybrid play experience where you can kind of choose where you want to play based on your situation at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess one final thing I have on this, and I know you have a hard out, so we need to wrap up soon, but is there the opposite of Steam? You say that you think Valve could be a sleeping giant. Is there any chance that Nintendo's asleep at the wheel? Because, you know, I've long had the Switch should have used a Volta APU instead of some outdated Maxwell thing, and why did the Wii U use this outdated thing, like, in weak seat? Like, I've always been critical of Nintendo besides the GameCube. Basically, after GameCube is where I'm like, why did you, or the Wii, whatever. I mean, it was its own thing. I actually am not that critical of the Wii. Like, but then they just sell 100 million consoles, and I've said this on, you know, the show before. Like, why the fuck should they listen to me? I mean, I like every decision they make seems to work, even if I think it could be better, and there's no way to prove a negative. But I keep hearing lately this input from developers that they are royally pissed at Nintendo. Like, Nintendo doesn't have game dev kits; they don't send them out. Like, one game dev I talked to said that he didn't have a dev kit. When he was asked what to do, they were basically told him, if you design your game for Switch and do these things, it should work. And he basically just had to cross his fingers and send it to QA. And that's what they're doing to devs right now. Like, they have these game key cards that are really weird and stupid. like they overcharge for their game key cards, and that's why people use game keys instead of a cartridge. It isn't just the speed; they like way overcharge for a 64 gigabyte game card. Like they're milking devs. They're not responsive to devs. They like do weird things, like they limit how much you can write to a card in a way that makes no sense. Like they're acting like this is tech from 2001 where it will like write itself to death. That just doesn't really happen anymore. And so devs have to like limit how often they access data in their game. It's their only console. And I know it sold really well at first, but so did the Xbox Series X. Is
True.
there any chance you think that Nintendo could be asleep at the wheel, and actually what we're seeing here is like the PS5 Pro selling out at first, but then tailing off because there's nothing really setting it apart from the previous gen?
I think the only thing that would cause Nintendo, maybe not the only, but the thing that would cause Nintendo to fall off is if their first party software starts to not be good. Because I mean, I don't want to say this with 100% certainty, but I think third party support does matter for Switch and Switch 2, but I think there is a substantial market that will buy a Switch 2 and they will never buy third party software on it ever. And that's I mean, it's a hybrid of like they have the IPs, they have the nostalgia, but if you can have that, but if you make bad games with it, then that would make you, it's not just that, right? Because there's certainly people act like, you know, there's the Nintendo bump. People only like this because it's a Nintendo character. It's like, no, there are maybe not many, but there are examples of games they put out with classic characters like Star Fox, that were not good.
Or recent Paper Marios where they got panned reviews.
Right. And so, and I mean, I'm sure like that Paper Mario game probably still sold more than a lot of PlayStation first party games, where
like
it's just like
Resistance 3 sold like 1.5 million or something.
Yeah. Gene Park always brings up that I think it's like Luigi's Mansion 3 has sold more than The Last of Us or something. It's like,
okay.
And it's because that software, dude,
Yeah.
people love it. And so they're kind of in a position where I'm sure, third party support. I'm not saying it's not important at all, but that is the make or break for Switch 2 is, do people want that software that is only available on that device? And right now, and clearly right now they do, and they're willing to pay for it. They do not care that Mario Kart World is $80, which most people got it in the bundle anyway with the console. But Nintendo, whether I know you're not as into Nintendo, so I'm not saying you specifically, but for the people in general, whether you are into Nintendo or not, the people that are into it are ravenous, and they want that software, man.
Yeah, I also think the Switch 1 though had the benefit of no competition. Like it's easy for me to say they could have done a few things better, but at the same time, I think far too many people are critical of the Switch 1 as being weak and forget that when it came out, it actually was the most powerful handheld. Like the PC versions were running like Intel Atom chips that sucked. They couldn't run any games. There were no it was actually stronger than some weaker laptops of the time that would have cost more. So I actually think the Switch 1 was a fairly well-designed device. Maybe should have had more RAM for sure, but and I think, and then it had no competition from Sony or anyone else. So I think there's an argument to be made though. The Switch 1 was always going to sell incredibly well because it was well thought out with good gimmicks. And I don't mean gimmick in a derogatory way. And decent game support. Whereas this time, I don't know, they'll have competition. And I don't think it's like anyone's going to outsell them. But, Xbox sells 5 million, Steam sells 10 million, Asus sells 2 million, Lenovo sells 500,000, PlayStation sells 20. I don't know. I'd be very surprised. Would you agree that, would you be surprised if the Switch 2 outsold or sold even remotely as well as the Switch 1?
I don't know. I mean, based on how its early trajectory is, and they don't even have like a game like Animal Crossing out on it. Like, I feel like it could.
Yeah. If it does, what that will tell you is all Nintendo needs is serviceable hardware that isn't completely stupid.
Yep.
And if the games keep coming, it'll keep selling. It is when the games fall apart, or if they make a Wii U level mistake where people just totally reject the hardware, that's when it falls apart. I guess we'll see. I don't know. But again, why would anyone listen to my opinion on Nintendo? They keep selling so well, and a lot of the advice I've given hasn't been necessary to do that well. So, all right. Well, I know you got a heart out. Also, I actually do about at the same time as well today as I'm going on vacation.
Nice.
But Dustin, I want to thank you so much for coming on this Friday when we recorded. And please plug yourself and anything else you want,
Sure. So all my podcasting work is at Last Stand. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, Sacred Symbols. I have been doing my own YouTube channel over the past 2 months, which has been pretty fun. You just search Dustin Furman. You can find that. I put out a new video every week, and I do a stream on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, that's the main 2 things I've been doing. Find me on Twitter as well. But thanks for having me, man. And enjoy your vacation. I'm off to tonight's. It's my anniversary today. I was telling you.
I couldn't believe you recorded with me on your anniversary too. I was like, if you need to,
it's I've got the evening blocked off for that. It's still a standard work day, but
true.
I was happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, and everybody, remember, subscribe to Moore's Law Z on YouTube. Ring the bell button. Like the video, give us hype points. That's now a thing. I guess it can't be more it can't be complicated enough from YouTube. So give us hype points and share, and then also consider joining the Moore's Law Z Patreon and subscribing to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice. And otherwise, everybody, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and have a good rest of your week, everybody. This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugad as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong, we love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Full, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Spunkner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Toka, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jerome Ferriero, Velcom Alev, Compressed AI Blocks, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Buma, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, Curry King 3, Chris Thenos, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake223, Jake Martin, Slicky, Gamers Unite, Amiable Chief, Ian Clifford, Aisha, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, Patty Cakes, Craig, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, Winwing, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Colatic, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Winstar, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Liddon, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, John Swin, Jansen Angima, Slushbob, Brian Wright, Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RV Racer, Alex Vega, Michael Cozy, Crystal Joe, Solarized 80, Albergun, Kikum, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hoodat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, State Farm Snake, Matthew Cassels, Omega Doge, Huger, Ander Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Nixus Mania, AI Soldiers 789, Smash Axley, Kareem Al Masri, Bespoke exclamation point, Rye Hill, Chi Bowles, Dam 1988, Fred Berger, Kevin Kuntz, Men Novis, Ragakusis, Armand Vakatur, Jonathan Harris, Callan Reichel, Kainush Kagani, Zabir Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Bjorn Toft, Josh Truna, Arnai RK0, Penguins from NKVD, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.